as of right now.
And no, I'm not lying, ragebaiting, or any other you say nowadays. EToH Spring Event 2026 is genuinely terrible. I hate it. Every Steeple is awful modern slop, and this event is worse than any April Fools. I'm feeling a 0 out of 10. I mean, a minus 100 out of 10, and the staff is a dictatorship, and they should bring back Juke. On March 11, it was announced that the April Fools events were being discontinued to create Easter events, or spring events. They're the same thing. This was the first spring event in 7 years, and I was super excited, but some people were heavily against this decision, saying that EToH doesn't like fun, that it's becoming way too serious, and that the April Fools events were being replaced with shitty Easter events. And none of this was before the event even released. So in this video, I will discuss everything about this event, the lobby, the content, and of course, the reception. Let's begin. To start off with this review, we gotta talk about the lobby, and man, I'm a huge fan of this. The green scenery filled to the brim with flowers, the structures that remind me of ancient Greek architecture and even include lore, and the beautiful view of the terrain with a giant tree in the middle and cages full of eggs falling from the clouds look absolutely stunning. The fact that this lobby was created in only 2 weeks is absolutely incredible, and that music... God damn! I love the hope and happiness flowing in here, which continues into the win room. In here, there's a dark path with a pretty drawing in the back, as well as a message that tells you to appreciate and care for everything. You should be proud of yourself and keep moving forward with your dreams, no matter how difficult they are. But most importantly, live and be proud of living. There's a reason why you are alive in this moment to witness it all. This is a beautiful message, and I find it so ironic that the happiest event in the game is the one people hate the most. Holy fuck, we're miserable. And now that I mentioned the community, the reception of this lobby is the least controversial compared to everything else. From what I've seen, most people like it. The only criticism I've seen is that the part count is way too high, which I agree with. A lobby does not need 50,000 parts, especially when it's a temporary event. It looks phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but that amount is just nuts. The game is already laggy because of the fat ass towers, and I don't think a lobby of this scale helps the issue. Not only is this a problem because of overall lag, but some people ended up hating the event only because of their bad performance, which is definitely an unfair critique. But it's also understandable since they cannot even experience the content to begin with, so the EToH staff should definitely consider them more. But this is an issue with almost the entire game, instead of just being a thing that happens in this event. And even though I think any EToH event shouldn't have these insane lobbies, the Spring Event 1 is absolutely a 10 out of 10. I would have passionate sex with it. Steeple of Grand Eggworks is the best Steeple here, and even though it's the easiest, its gameplay is pretty solid, having multiple creative mechanics and puzzles. You have these eggs that let you jump mid-air, these balances that you put different forces on, these crushers you need to avoid, and these potions that give you short bursts of jump power. And even though these mechanics are simple, they are very entertaining. However, I have some criticism. First of all, when this giant chocolate mixer starts burning, the section is a big difficulty spike. This is because these crushers are in sync with the fast-paced music, making subsections pretty tight for an easy Steeple. And I say this being a kata player.
Come on in, bro, come on in.
Who the fuck just showed that? If this part was nerfed, it would be better for an easy Steeple. Secondly, the ending of this is not that great. After the tower crossing that indirectly references the 2 other Steeples in this area, SoSW and SoEEEE, that name is so fucking stupid, you meet the CEO of this facility, but he doesn't really care that you exploited his stuff and just lets you go. And the final part feels like a rush recap of all the mechanics because what the hell are the crushers doing here? They never appear anywhere else besides one section, so putting it here feels pretty awkward. As for the design, every single part is filled to the brim with details. For example, in the first area, you enter the factory and find yourself in this magical area filled with candy, bunnies, a chocolate river, and a bunch of other cool shit. This sounds like a lot, and it is, but the gameplay is easy to follow while letting you enjoy the decoration, and this goes for all the sections that look really fucking good. For the reception, this is the steeple that people like the most, but I did see some complaints. First of all, the steeple's length. This is less of an issue with the steeple, but with EToH's duration hints instead, because why do steeples and towers have the same hints when steeples are way shorter? Since they have fewer floors, the player expects to beat them faster, so when a steeple hits 15 minutes, it starts to feel like way too much. So why not modify the duration hints to adapt to the number of floors? This would easily stop a lot of player frustration, and it doesn't even take that much effort to do. Secondly, the bugs. These are honestly pretty weird to talk about because they rarely happen to me, but I've definitely seen a lot of them, especially in the chest section. But overall, Steeple of Grand Eggworks is the best steeple in the event. The gameplay is simple but very entertaining, the design is filled with awesome details, and even though this steeple drags on a bit and has a few random bugs, I had a ton of fun with it. I would give this steeple an 8.5 out of 10. It's pretty damn good. Once upon a time, there was a man who was depressed, and he... Why are we booing? Oh shit, yo, I forgot y'all hate stories in towers. Oh, that's my bad, man. But I was gonna say, y'all won't like this next one because the Steeple of Scrambled Wonderland has a bunch of it. Maybe a little bit too much. The story is pretty simple. You hear something in your house basement, so you go investigate, the floor starts breaking, and you fall into this new world. After falling, you meet this fucks guy who asks you to get items for a tea party because he's a lazy fuck. Once you get everything, the Mad Hatter appears, who is mentioned as the guy who can help you leave. But it turns out he can't actually help you and instead mentions a girl called the Diamond Duchess, whom the rest start calling a prankster of a ruler. Holy shit, what a reference. So you go to her castle, get trapped, escape, and finally encounter the Diamond Duchess. After a long ass dialogue, she lets you leave and then you wake up in your house, revealing that the entire thing was a dream. So yeah, that's pretty much it. However, even though the story is pretty straightforward, it also feels pretty undercooked. First of all, many of the characters in the steeple are useless. Quero, this random girl whose name I forgot, and the Diamond Duchess do absolutely nothing. The only relevant characters to this story are the quick brown fucks because he asks you to prepare the tea party, and the Mad Hatter because he teaches you how to glide to reach the castle. But the rest of them just kind of talk to you. I mean, they don't even say anything special. It feels like they're just dragging the steeple. Secondly, the ending is very underwhelming since it just ends up being a dream, so all the characters and dialogue end up being worthless, which makes me wonder why give me this much text if it's gonna be all irrelevant. And lastly, why the hell can you not skip the dialogue by clicking? The option to skip full conversations is right there, but you either have to wait for the slow dialogue to move automatically or straight up miss everything. Okay, so I found this out while replaying this steeple, but some dialogue in certain moments can actually be sped up. Oh my voice crack. Anyway, this is also really confusing because then you are forced to like read a fuck ton of text extremely slowly. It can be said that the dialogues that can be sped up are because they come from side characters, but that just means that it was a conscious decision to turn the skip setting on and off constantly, which is just, why? Sometimes I want to read the story without waiting eons or missing it. Why would you manually toggle the skip on and off to get a much worse result? Like, this is genuinely so dumb and it actually pisses me off, dude. Besides my multiple complaints with the story, the steeple itself is pretty good. As for the gameplay, this one is pretty solid and has some cool mechanics, but my favorite has to be this parachute you use to glide, go through rings to speed up, and dodge moving obstacles. There are some awkward jumps and puzzles here and there, but it didn't ruin the experience for me. They act more as very loud hiccups since it's very easy to spot the issue and how to fix them. If we talk about the design, this steeple goes absolutely insane. Everything here from the structures, the terrain, and hell, even the small details like the bushes and paths using different textures is pretty goddamn sick. It presents the idea of finding a wonderland extremely well. The best selling point of this is right when you fall into the world, when you can see how gigantic and detailed everything is. And finally, let's talk about the reception. This ended up being the community's least favorite steeple, with most of the criticisms mentioning how long the steeple is, how mediocre the story is, both of which I agree with, and the bugs that I just never encountered, so I can't really say anything about them. There's a pretty strange epidemic in this event. Even though the steeple's story is extremely flawed and way too long, the gameplay is solid and the design is pretty fantastic. I would give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Get rid of the filler dialogue and you've got a killer steeple. Steeple of Eggciting Eggsploration is the most interesting steeple in this area, but not because it's the best, and also not because it has the most garbage name I've ever seen. We're going to switch it up for a bit and mention the reception now. So, on release, this steeple was shot in the chest 30 times, bleeding out on the floor and crying out for help for how buggy and poorly optimized it was. You can imagine how people felt about this one.
Are we actually serious? Well, guys, that's been my Easter video.
I have never seen a tower so broken that 14 hours after its release, it had bug fixes announced in updates and teasers instead of game tweaks. Twice! This steeple got a world record of working like shit. I actually didn't play this on release because I did not want to feel like killing myself over a steeple I already knew wasn't gonna work, but once it was fixed, I actually thought it was pretty fun. First of all, this one has a story just like SoSW, but this steeple does it much better. The story can be described in only 2 words: AI slop. The concept is that you work on a little farm and this bunny shows you an AI named EToH, who after a few hard misses, gets sick of getting prompts and goes to space to get better power. After you hop on a spaceship to stop him, you and EToH race to see who delivers an egg to the sun first. Then a bunch of random shit that no one really cares about happens until you reach EToH's office, where this Moai mentions a light burning deep inside you before giving you the ability to paint the world, which is a clear message for how humans are creative souls compared to robots. After EToH tries to kill us and we beat his ass on a boss fight, we reach the sun, EToH approaches it, and he dies. Yay! Then the egg that we were carrying the entire time starts to crack, giving us the option to deliver or keep the bird, but no matter what, the guy just runs away. And just like that, the steeple ends. This story is honestly pretty damn good, and I would even argue that it's the steeple's biggest highlight because it doesn't take itself too seriously while still having an important message. SoEEEE is a breath of fresh air among most other story towers, which prefer to focus on deep or even depressing topics. There's nothing wrong with that, of course, but sometimes simplicity is key. I've already talked enough about this story though, so let's talk about the gameplay. In here, we have some cool mechanics and puzzles, with some being great, but others being flawed, thanks to wacky movement and their sections being way too long. And I also don't love how you can't move in some cutscenes. Just let me move, bruh. However, the best part is the final floor, which uses the entire duration of its song to make a lengthy section where you collect rings to make damage while using all of the mechanics presented previously in many different sections. Not to mention the amazing visuals. These are so varied and colorful, they're honestly the coolest looking parts of the whole event. And now that I mentioned the design, this one deserves a spot for one of the most vibrant steeples or even towers ever made. And it struck me visually because it just screams happiness, which, as I said with the story, is very rare to see nowadays. The creativity here is insane. However, some parts look cluttered and even ugly since there's a lot of colors, movement and lots going on, and sometimes the opposite can happen when there's barely any color variety. But when the design gets good, goddamn does it get good. Overall, Steeple of Eggciting Eggsploration is a good steeple with an important and funny story, decent gameplay, and a very creative decoration style that works out slightly more often than not. This gets an 8 out of 10. If all the music weren't the same, I would enjoy this more. No, I'm not even kidding. Tower of a Rabbit Hole is the hardest and only tower in this event. This one was added 39 days after the event came out, which is obviously extremely goddamn late. This probably happened because the other steeple planned for part 2 was taking way too long, which is why there's sadly no challenging steeple here. Instead, going to the next Easter event in 2027. Even though this is disappointing, the tower that did come out is pretty solid. Let's start with the story, because once again, you need to read in this tower. I'm so sorry, y'all. In here, you climb this large tree called the Provider to collect resources, but when you put a crack in the wall, you collect sap from the inside of the tree, the floor starts breaking, and you fall into a cave. Once you escape the cave and a bunch of other places like a bunny village and a giant castle, you reach a forgotten laboratory, revealing that the giant tree was an experiment the entire time. And even though there's a bunch of backstory to this little thing, the most important aspects are that the Provider was created to fight the extreme food scarcity throughout the town, and that it had multiple errors, killing a bunch of scientists and affecting other regions such as the bunny village. After this, we'll leave to grab matches and burn down the Provider, ending the story. I'm sorry. What? Why do we burn down our source of resources because of a previous accident if for some bunnies that were already living fine? There is an argument that the provider could get worse in the future, which is why we stop it now, but sabotaging an entire town's resources is way worse. I don't really know, man. This ending feels more like a moral dilemma instead of being an inherently good or bad kind of thing. It's definitely interesting though. Regarding the gameplay and design, this tower is easily the most basic in the area. This is made by the same creator who made Tower Spinning Right Through, which explains why the gameplay is the way it is and the overwhelming usage of fitting platforms, jump pads, and jump boosters. But this tower uses a few more mechanics, such as these spikes that make you lose progress or even help you recover, this weird part that is collidable but when you pass through it, it becomes transparent, and this carrot that functions as a manual double jump that is even combined with jump boosters. All of these mechanics are used pretty well, but the overall gameplay is nothing special, it's just decent. The same thing goes for the design. It looks good, but compared to the other stuff, this is the least interesting since it has a simplistic decoration style. Some parts look pretty good though. As for the reception, most criticisms mention the amount of bugs, which I didn't get so I just shut up, and the very confusing ending of the tower, which I agree with because I did not understand it either. I used to think we were the villain until these posts made me think differently, so shout out to them. But one criticism I saw that I don't really agree with is that this tower's punishment was bad, which is strange because there's like barely any of that here. The only punishing floors are floor 5, floor 8, and floor 9, which aren't completely punishing since you have multiple chances to recover, especially on the last two. So I don't really get how this would be a bad punishing tower when you're quite literally safe more often than not. This is a newborn compared to Tower of Nerves of Steel. In short, Tower of a Rabbit Hole is a decent tower in every aspect. The story is the most interesting part because of the ending, which only makes sense if you pay attention to the details instead of just the dialogue. It's certainly a creative approach, even if the result ends up somewhat wonky. 8 out of 10. Now that we have reviewed all of the content, it's time to reveal the final score for the EToH Spring Event 2026.
Shoulda did this sooner, but I had to lose the first place. This shit, ooh, yeah. I'ma take it to the moon. Smoke with me, this shit smooth, yeah.
We have finally reached the end of this video. Before I reveal the final score, you might be wondering why I included the reception of everything. And that's because this video was meant to be a critique of the EToH community rather than just be a review. Because even though this event is not perfect, the amount of disrespect it's getting is insane. This spring event is so much better than April Fools, which get on funnier each year. Just imagine having to force yourself every year to make something funny. At that point, it just becomes uninteresting. And it did! This is why I consider the switch from April Fools to spring events to not just happen because the staff wanted serious events, but also because ironically, they have more fun producing them since they are not forcing themselves to be funny. The staff creates something they truly enjoy instead, giving us a personal side of them we have never seen before. Not only that, but we got April Fools themed challenges and cosmetics, as well as a set of monthly challenges for June that were only Steeple of low woe with different modifiers. This is EToH directly telling you in the fucking face that they still have fun. But funnily enough, people thought they were giving up on challenges and just being lazy, which is so damn ironic because they turn around and praise the April Fools events when it's the exact same thing. I already said this at the start of this section, but I'll say it again to make it absolutely clear. I don't actually care if you like this event or not because that's just your opinion. What I'm critiquing here is the loud minority in the community who see an update get announced and immediately create this made up idea that it will be bad even when it hasn't even come out. These prejudices are dumb and shouldn't happen at all. But some even said that the Easter event would suck because the 2019 version of it wasn't good, and also because it wouldn't be better than April Fools, which is so unbelievably biased. These people didn't see the Easter event as its own thing, they only saw it as the cost of April Fools removal, so the hatred and expectations were completely blown out of proportion. And also, yes, this event isn't perfect. You and I may have our own reasons to think that, and even if I don't agree with all your opinions, that doesn't make me or the people who like the event EToH staff booty lickers that some in the community and even YouTubers try to paint us as. These posts do nothing but keep preventing us from discussing subjects respectfully since some people genuinely believe what is being said here. And the fact that these are painted as jokes is super lame. They are more like venting about the current state of EToH but not having the balls to say it directly. How do I know this? Because I literally did it myself and people thought it was real. But that is another topic that deserves its own video. And besides, this is getting too long. TLDR, stop judging a book by its cover. It really is that simple, but I guess the EToH community and the internet as a whole at this point are fucking brain dead. When I combine all of my scores, excluding the highest and lowest, Elysian Fields gets an 8.16 out of 10. But if you want to consider everything, we get an 8.4 out of 10. But even with these scores, I will give EToH Spring Event 2026 a solid 8 out of 10. This event is pretty good, but just as I'm worried about the hatred in this community, I'm also uncertain about how events are turning out. Thanks to the inclusion of spring events, EToH has to create 3 proper events each year, with Halloween and Christmas only being 2 months apart. I feel like the game is setting itself up for failure here. Hey guys, yeah, it's me again. So in this part, I said that instead of 3 events per year, EToH should make 2 to give developers more time to create ambitious ideas while also focusing on major updates such as the obelisks. And I still stand by that. So why am I recording this? Well, that's because this exact idea was done, with the Christmas event being erased from existence. I used to worry about how they will put this off without causing controversy, but they just silently removed the card from the Trello board. And I think it actually worked because I saw nearly no one talk about this. So yeah, I no longer think this will be an issue because it has already been resolved. Rest in peace, Christmas events. At least for this year, maybe. Who knows? Thank you for watching this video. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. And remember, this event marks the fucking April Fools! Get fucked! Okay, bye guys.